All right, welcome back to the show. So I'm super excited to have my guest join me today, Ari. So Ari is a real estate investor, developer, and he's been somebody who has been in the real estate industry for a long time, very successful, owns his own company, and manages over $500 million in assets, ongoing scaling potentially up to billions of dollars in assets in management as well. So Ari, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
Kobe, you have one of my favorite names. Rest in peace to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm excited to have you on because you have a wealth of knowledge, I'll say, in real estate and business. You're an author as well. So you've written books and you've helped other entrepreneurs be successful. Before we get started and just kind of get into everything, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself so that way the audience knows who you are, if they've never
Sure.
heard?
Yeah, sure. I'm an attorney by trade. And man, it wasn't too long ago that I was delivering pizzas and flipping burgers. Like, my dad was an Iranian immigrant, and I was lucky enough to grow up in Highland Park in Dallas. It's a very, very wealthy neighborhood, but I was kind of the poorest kid in the richest neighborhood. So that had its challenges. In hindsight, it was a huge blessing, actually, growing up, a few feet from fame, will make you hungry. And I tell people all the time, like, if you're not hungry, you're never going to eat, and so I think that's probably one of the most important attributes that you can have to any type of success, to build a great family, build a big business. You gotta have that hunger to do that. And I was very fortunate that was kind of cultivated for me early. But I started my first real estate business when I was in law school. I borrowed $3,500 in San Antonio to build a single family home. We built it, sold it, and then 2008 hit, and I went into practicing law for a couple of years as a criminal defense lawyer, doing corporate work as well. And then one of my very very close mentors and friends, who's my wrestling coach since I was in sixth grade, his cousin is one of the most decorated financiers in all of Wall Street. I mean, he's done like $500 billion with a B of financing, of commercial real estate financing. And he funded my first big business to do big parties around the Super Bowl, NBA All Star. And we did the Super Bowl parties for the Black Eyed Peas, David Guetta, the biggest names in the world, when it was in Dallas. And then the biggest ice storm in the history of Dallas wiped the parties out. So we still had them, but I went to sleep a millionaire and woke up broke. And then the following weekend, we had NBA All Star in LA. And there's a long story I'll tell you privately, but I basically was playing poker with Hugh Hefner, and he agreed to let us rent the mansion to do this party for Snoop Dogg. Well, 3 days before the party, I was watching the news, and Legionnaire's disease broke out and canceled the party for Snoop Dogg in LA. And I wrote a book about it called The Gift of Failure, and it's by no means like the great American novel, but I kind of joke that hopefully it's worth the $10 on Amazon. But there's definitely a list of a bunch of really good books that are in the back of it, that if my book sucks, you'll read some good ones. But yeah, so I know a lot about getting kicked in the teeth, and being a wrestler on a team that was one of the most decorated teams in the history of Texas. We had six national champions on our team. I just got the shit kicked out of me all the time. And when you're building a big business, I found that you got to roll with the punches. Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think the big takeaway for anybody that's out there doing it, any doing kind of sales, certainly, because you get so much rejection, and either you can take that as, rejection and kind of hurt, like you know, hurt your feelings or something like that. And clearly, sometimes it does. I've been there. Or you can use it as fuel and learn something and get to introspection, figure out what went wrong, what you can do better. But I think that's so much about everything we've done. As you said, I started this business, and we own hundreds of acres across Austin. I own 100% of my company still. Our investors are public pension plans, insurance companies. We have hundreds of high net worth investors, and if you build everything we own, it's billions and billions of dollars worth of assets across apartments and industrial and homes. And yeah, and we're doing some cool stuff, man. And so I can tell you, no matter whatever I've done, failing has been the most critical component of it. And now I kind of think of failure as learning how to win.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think it's important to highlight that as well. We just had a podcast a little bit earlier today, talking about failure as well and why it's important to highlight that in the success stories and not just the, kind of what led to success as well. So I wanted to kind of get your take on this because you went from being an attorney, a successful one, into starting your own business.
Yeah,
So what was that journey like, right? Because, a lot of people think, when you get started in a career like being an attorney, that's you're set for life, but you decided to go
totally.
your own thing. So what was that mindset like for you to make that switch?
Man, it's a really good question. Some of it kind of fell into my lap. My dad, look, being Iranian, and I think a lot of a lot of people that have Iranian parents or parents that aren't American, there's pressures to be a doctor or a lawyer, and maybe nowadays you can be an engineer or a coder. But to my dad, he thought, doctor or lawyer. My grandpa was a lawyer. My dad went to law school, later in life, and he wanted me to be a lawyer, and I'm glad that he put me on the path because I barely got out of high school. I had to go to two community colleges just to get into A&M and then get into law school, and I did figure it out when I got there, obviously. But when I was practicing law, and a little bit of this is in the book, but the way the parties happened that failed, and thank God they failed because the my Jewish friends have a saying, "Man plans, God laughs," and so I was in my office and working for one of the most famous criminal defense lawyers in Dallas, who I clerked for through law school and I mean through high school, college, and law school. Um, were doing some work as like promoters and party people for LeBron James. And basically, before that party that was in Dallas for NBA All Star in 2010, the club like lost their liquor license, and so we got to talking, and we negotiated for them to find a new venue to do the party for LeBron, one of those celebrity appearance, type parties. And then there was this rapper you all might have heard of. I'd never heard of him before. His name was Drake, was doing the event, and we paid him $5,000 to perform. I'd never heard of him. And then after the success of those parties, I was telling that story to my wrestling coach and to his cousin, who was a very wealthy, New York guy, and he was like, "Hey, Super Bowl is going to be in Dallas next year. And then NBA All Star is going to be in LA, and he gave me the money to do it." So it was one of those moments where it's like, "Hey, you want to move to New York?" And I was like, "Well, fuck." I was like, "Big city of dreams," and, jumped on a plane. And that business just went from wanting to do something more because in law, you represent someone else's dreams. As an entrepreneur, you're the client. And so I wish I thought of it as poignantly as I'm telling you now, but there was an itch inside of me that I wanted to be the client, not a criminal defense client. I wanted to be a corporate client, but yeah, and so that it kind of fell into my lap in that way, even though I had the itch. But when when you get the knock at the door, you got to answer, and that was the moment. And literally, he told me on a Thursday night, and I moved to Manhattan that Sunday.
Yeah, so it's something that happened really quick, right? And the reason why I asked you that is because a lot of real estate agents who are probably listening and watching this, they come from maybe a similar background, right? They have their W-2, their professional careers before, and then they jump into real estate and all of a sudden realize they're an entrepreneur as well. So, I mean, somebody who's, like yourself, who's gone through this, what are some of your best tips for an agent who is, transitioning out of somebody telling them what to do pretty much all day, every day versus now you're 100% responsible for
It's
your
very
own income?
difficult, man. It's very difficult. It's not being an entrepreneur is not candy canes and lollipops, and it's not for everybody. You know what I mean? And I'm not, you got to have a certain level of madness, to be able to do it. And like I said, like that's not necessarily a bad or a good thing. There's a lot of great things about having a great job and et cetera. But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be able to decide for a certain amount of time, you're going to be doing a lot of different people's jobs, and you have to have a lot of humility because there's so much you don't know. If you can be, if you're a great salesperson as an agent, that's step one. And if you work at a brokerage shop, if you're at Compass or Keller Williams or something. They're doing a lot of marketing for you. You got a great office to go to. You got a conference room. You got, some people around helping you, whatever. But when it's you on your own, just being a salesperson is not enough. You got to be handling your emails. You got to be doing accounting. You got to be doing, there's all these other things that get thrown in your lap that can be very overwhelming, where the sales part, you know, gets kicked further down the list because you have so much administrative crap that you have to do. So when you are going to make that transition, I think finding a way to have, before you make the leap, put some of those safeguards in place, like know a good CPA, that can kind of handle your books for you. If there's someone, a friend of yours that's really good at email marketing, I'm just making something up, or at social media, or create some strategic alliances. Doesn't necessarily mean, have a full-on partner, which in a way, having a great partner could be great, but you need to have a plan of who's going to do all that other stuff that's also very necessary. But Jack Welch, who's the CEO of GE, who I've, read everything he's written. I mean, rest in peace, brilliant. Yeah, he said that, look, the sales department isn't the whole company. But if you don't have a sales department, you don't have a company. So you need a way to enable yourself as the broker, as the agent, to go make sales, get clients, close deals. And when you're bogged down with all that other stuff, it can be very overwhelming. So any way that you can farm that out. And right now, with all these resources that are out there, virtual assistants, and there's so much that never was out there before, that if you take some time to prepare for that, I think you'll be not only less stressed, but so much, so much, so much more prepared to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of agents, that's the biggest thing they struggle with in the beginning is when they start getting business, everything starts piling up on their schedule and they have no more time to go out there and get business, right? So you have to make sure that you have a team around you, that there's people who are really great at what they're doing these things for you in your business and really run your real estate agent career as if it was, a business that you have capital in and
That's
have
right. And you
partners.
do. You're putting sweat equity in, you're investing your time, but you also have to be ready to work your ass off. And if you have a job, okay, and people who have jobs, they work very hard. I'm not undermining that at all. I know people work extremely, extremely hard. But being an entrepreneur, there's another gear, where you have to make a lot of sacrifices, which to me was part of the game, and that was okay. But you need to make that decision emotionally and psychologically before that you're going to cut out distractions, whether that's going out with friends or that it's to be in, certainly in the beginning years. That's not forever. Once you build a team and things, like, you'll find some time to, hopefully go on a trip or do something and find some enjoyment in other things. But when you make that leap for the first 12 to 18 months, you got to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no days off. You might miss time at the gym. You're going to miss time with family, friends. But so prepare yourself to say, look, I'm in this. And if you don't do that, 99% of businesses, fail in the first 2 years. And then the rest of them fail within 5 years. The percentage of lasting in business on your own past the 10-year mark I read some statistic, don't quote me on it, but something like there's a higher chance that you get struck by lightning 4 times in one place than having a business that lasts longer than 10 years. And I just crossed the 11-year mark, or it'll be 11 years in February, and going through a global pandemic, interest rates hiking, all these other things that happen. You gotta have a level of grit and a level of resilience and a level of agility and flexibility to kind of roll with those punches, to be able to get through it, because so much of the success isn't about just being an agent. It's not just about making sales. And when you have a job, it is, but being an entrepreneur, there's all these other factors that you have to be able to endure, and just being tired, just fucking being tired. Like, literally everything's coming in front of you. You're getting listings, you get clients. But if you are up till 3 in the morning working on accounting and you have a showing at 8:30, you're freaking tired. So thinking through these potentials and preparing yourself emotionally, to deal with that because this game is in between your two ears. This is a head game. This is not a mind game, if you know what I mean. Like this is there's a head space. You got to be ready to go out there and channel that that black mamba to go to go get it done, which I'm sure all of you will be able to do. But I wish myself certainly that I would have known it was going to be this hard. And I didn't. Like I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know it was going to be this hard. And I didn't know how many relationships were going to disappear, how many sleepless nights there were going to be, how much longer it was going to take than I initially thought in my mind. And um, not to detract anybody, but more just mentally say, look, I'm in this motherfucker. Like I'm in this. And unless you're in it 120%, it will not work. 90%, you can be very successful at a job. Very. And 80%, 80/20, you can be very successful. But as an entrepreneur that's starting out going to this, 120% or zero.
Yeah, you have to absolutely be committed, and that's you have to make that commitment beforehand, right? You can't just
That's
say,
right. I
you know,
think so. I think so. And I think you're just better suited for it because it's not if there's going to be problems, it's when there's going to be problems. Are you mentally resilient? And I'll say as a tool for me, and I know it might sound corny to some people, but I'm big into meditation. Meditation has been a huge part of my life. I learned about it from Ray Dalio. I took his advice and went and did it. And I do practice meditation every single day. And the way that that calms my mind to be able to go out and do the things in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon or in the evenings, but the morning for sure, like just finding a way to physically get in a state that you're ready to go deal with all those, bullets flying at your head. And also the it comes with great fulfillment too, but it's a serious commitment, and I think commitment is an understatement. And I think it's also preparing your family and your friends. I think that's the other part is going to your loved one, your significant other, or whoever is very close to you in your life and saying, hey, honey, like, babe, like this is I'm gonna go in this, and I'm not gonna be able to have date night every Thursday. I'm gonna miss happy hour on the weekends. Mom, I'm not gonna see you for a couple months. I love you. Like if I don't answer your like prepare them so they say, oh, you're gonna be, and then you'll get a support system because again, it sounds so corny, but the more you can let the people in your life know, I'm in this. Like I'm training for a marathon, I'm running what however you explain it, and I'm in it. I'll be back. I'll see you at, Christmas or Hanukkah or but for the next few months, year, I'm out to be
yeah,
in.
exactly. You're committing to yourself, but you're also preparing the people around you so that way you're not ruining relationships, right?
That's
Because
right.
I mean, I'm sure you can agree on this as well. Some relationships you might have to let go. I think
You
a lot
have
of
to.
agents struggle
No,
with this
it's
too.
about minimum. It's about I thought early on mistakenly that I should be doing more. And in reality, it was more about doing less and finding those critical tasks where you might have, 10 acquaintances. I'm just using a number. This is the time to figure out who are your two friends
Yep.
and still be, you don't have time to answer 10 acquaintances and where they're going and listening to all their bullshit, but your two friends, your brother, your sister, your mom, like stay with them deep and let all the other, you know what I mean? Like, so you're not going all the happy hour, this, that, and the other, and walking the dogs with the neighbors, but your best friend, your mom, your dad, whoever that person is, you're making quality time to have a quality discussion, quality whatever. And if they're the real friends that I pray everybody has, they're going to support you and they're going to say, you got this and be there for you. They're going to show up with a sandwich, at the house when they know you hadn't eaten all day. And those are the blessings come and you start to find out who the real ones are too.
Right, exactly. Do more with less, right? Do more of
Yes.
less things, higher quality
Yes.
things, higher quality people in and around.
Exactly right. That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing I think I really want to get your take on, just shifting a little bit, is there's a lot of agents who are very successful as an individual, right? They're
Hmm.
great solopreneurs, they're great at sales, they can hit their sales benchmarks and exceed them every year. But now they're getting to a point where they want to scale up. They want to build a team, they want to start their own company, but they really struggle. And we've seen a lot of that in the industry where they go from great sales, but it's really difficult to step into that role of great leader. So you having run a business, of multi-millions of dollars, how did that process go? What advice do you have for somebody who's great as an individual but need to transition into being a great leader?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll give you an example that I think will bring some clarity to it. So if you're going to be a founder, okay, and in this instance, being an entrepreneur, let's use the word founder with entrepreneur just interchangeably. So if you're a great founder, there's some qualities that make a great founder. I'm talking human characteristics, grit, tenacity, vision, sales, Mark doing all different hats, work ethic, right? Then there's great traits that make a CEO, a chief executive officer. Those involve delegation, people skills, systems, processes. What makes a great founder makes a terrible CEO. Meaning, in order to transition from founder to CEO, you have to fundamentally change your DNA. You have to go from being the best shooter in the world to being the best coach in the world. And that is a seismic shift of in your persona. And boy, was it tough for me. I'm sure for other people it might be easier, but man, and still it's a very much an evolution to let your baby. I have three beautiful kids, but letting my first daughter go to kindergarten was like, whoa, 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 oh, and but by the second one, you're like, okay, he'll be ready, and then she'll be, but it's very similar where you have to coach people and those skills, those traits. As a CEO, a terrible CEO does everything. A great CEO delegates the best people in the world to be your lawyer, to be your CPA, to be your marketer, to be your social media, to be your assistant, to be your graphic designer. And so when you go in and you start to go to that scalability, you need to look in the mirror and say, okay, these traits that I've exhibited, the strategies that got me here are not the strategies that are going to get me there. Period.
Yep, absolutely. So, as somebody who's going through that process, right, what would you say are some of the first things they should think about giving up and letting go so that can make that transition from being a great founder into being a great CEO?
Well, I'll say, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And what I mean by that is so many of us, me for sure, I didn't have the self-awareness. Like, and what I'm telling you, I didn't know. Nobody told me what I told you right now. But even when I did start to figure it out, I needed coaching for that. So me personally, I got some business coaches and some life coaches. And now, but when I was doing it, I'm showing all the gray hair. There wasn't many of them, but now there's so many opportunities, master classes, free YouTube videos, like, there's some that you can go online for 50 bucks, 100 bucks, talk to great entrepreneurs. So my boy, one of my dear, dear friends, him and his brother run School of Hard Knocks. Okay. I don't know, you might have seen it. How did you get, we did a podcast the other day, at my office. We've been friends for years. They live here in Austin. They have a program which I love where these entrepreneurs they come and talk. You can pay a subscription for 50 bucks or something and listen to these guys talk. You can watch YouTube videos, you can read things about like go get some coaching, and even if you don't maybe have all the money to get a personal coach, which I recommend, to find someone that you can share these issues with. This is what I'm doing. Have them give you some objectives, read some books, but face the fact that you are going to have to change how you are as a human being, how you answer things, what is necessity, what is priority. And I needed help to do that. And I've gone through multiple life coach and business coach, some expensive, some very reasonable, to train to do that, because just like anything, it's like a I think of it like, if you've never done pull-ups before, doesn't mean that you have broken arms, you can't do pull-ups. You got to practice. It'll be hard, and you'll do it, and you'll be sore, and you'll do it again, and you'll build that CEO muscle over time.
Exactly, because you're starting from scratch, right? You're great at this one thing. Now you're stepping into a new role. You're starting from zero
Maybe
against
zero,
beginner's
even
mentality.
worse than zero, because you have bad habits.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the founder's
And
habit,
you
right?
and you have the helicopter. It's like the helicopter parent. It's like, no, let the kid do his homework. Don't just jump in and say it's B, it's A, it's four. Like you gotta find a way to you gotta let the babies get up and go to school.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the hardest things for somebody who is coming from a founder's mentality into a CEO mentality is that they're so used to accountability, right? They're so used to being 100% accountable for their results and their habits and their actions. Now they're, almost no accountability, right? Because they can't control what their team does. They can't go out there and force people to do things. So they're trying to do everything for
And they
everybody.
shouldn't. And they shouldn't. And then again, like there is so many great minds out there that have experienced this problem, and there is strategies for it. There's training. So I highly recommend, I wasn't smart enough or capable enough to do it myself, but if there's a seminar to attend, a group, find a social group of founders becoming CEOs, like go get help, like open your mind and be curious, and humble yourself to go learn how to do it and make that part of your practice, just like you would make exercise part of your practice to be healthy. You need to put yourself in situations around people that have walked that path before. Only an idiot learns from their own failures. A wise person learns from the failures of others.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're right. There's so many free resources out there.
Oh, dude, so many. You don't need to go spend a bunch of money. Some guy that said, pay me 50 grand to, no, like go get on YouTube, read some books, go in little social circles, watch some Instagram lives, listen to some podcasts, get some jewels and try them and fail and try again. But most importantly, recognize that that you have a strategy problem. You have a personnel problem, and that's you.
Right, exactly. You got to start all over again, develop better habits, let go of those bad habits.
And then you can scale like a motherfucker.
Yep, there you go. Sorry, I think one of the last things I wanted to just kind of wrap up today with is, as we head, straight into 2026 moving forward, there's a lot of changes happening, right, in business and around the
Yep.
world. What would you say are some of the things that an entrepreneur, somebody who is starting their own business, have their own business, trying to scale their own business, what are some of the skills that they absolutely need to develop moving forward now? And is it any different from the skills that have been talked about for decades?
Totally. Use Chat GPT. I mean, like it's so like I use it countless times. It is or Gemini or Grok, all three of them, because I actually think I get different answers from all three of them. But the investment of the $40 a month or whatever the service is, $20 a month for chat. Ask it everything. Send it a contract to redline for you. Ask what to say in a rebuttal. Ask it accounting questions. Ask it, and don't take it just as gospel, but utilize this system of the intelligence of the world and elevate and enhance your damn brain to get in that situation. That would be the first $40 I spent if I started on my own. Or even before, I'd spend the $40 to the chat GPT, which I do, and ask it also. I don't have to do everything it said, but I'm getting its opinion. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What would you do about this? What would a broker in Houston, Texas do right now to get whatever? What's the best undermarket city? I just blow it up with questions and get feedback. And so it's like having this advisor, this brilliant advisor. So great advisors, great mentors. You don't have to listen to everything they say, but you listen to them, you hear them out. And same thing with these engines. I just look at it as, as assistant or friend or a junior executive or an associate, and I consult with it. I consult with it, all sorts of things, and just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then copy and paste the things I love. And then I go back and read them. And sometimes I run that copy and paste back through it one more time and say, what are the top three things on this I should do right this minute? And start making actions. And I know it sounds so simple, but fundamentals win championships, bud. The fancy this, we're gonna go do blah blah blah. Like that shit don't work. Like it's and I would just sit there, go on my own, say, what are the 10 things I should know? I'm a founder and I'm trying to become a CEO. Ask ChatGPT right now. I heard on this thing, whatever. Oh, here's the 5 things. What are some pitfalls I should look out for? Learn how to ask prompts. Like go online and find what is a great prompt to learn XYZ. And if you've been using ChatGPT for 6 months or a year or time, there is prompts that'll it'll tell you about you. Ask it, say, what are some things I should learn? There's some things I should work on. Be brutally honest with me, and then use that as your coach, to do stuff or at least start. And I think it'll put you light years ahead of people that aren't doing it.
Absolutely. So you heard it here. Make sure you use AI, keep it simple, right? Because all that fancy stuff, it's too complicated and it's too much for somebody to try to implement all at once.
Boring is beautiful, my friend.
So,
Boring, repeatable, over and over. Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, shot 500 free throws every single day since he was like 16. If you do the math, he did 3.5 million shots to make 3,600 3-pointers to be the greatest shooter of all time.
make sure you keep the fundamentals always in front.
Boring is beautiful. The simpler, the better. Simple, simple, repeat. Simple, simple, repeat. Simple, simple, repeat. That might not be the fanciest, flashy thing to put on social media, but the thing that's really cool about that is he puts more commas in your bank account. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's what matters, right? Enough with the
Well,
follow.
to me, to
Yeah.
me, in my mind, Jeff Bezos was worth $5 billion and he was still driving his Honda. So keep it simple, keep your expenses low, keep your health right, calm your mind, consult all these great resources and get to work because ain't none of this stuff is gonna work for you unless you're working ruthlessly.
Absolutely. Ari, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today, man. You dropped some valuable nuggets today. And for anybody out there who is watching or listening to this that want to get connected with you, what are some of the best places for people to, follow you on and to just kind of continue learning from you?
Thank you, bro. Sure, we're active on pretty much all the social networks. You can go to rastegarcapital.com or at Rastegar on Instagram or on YouTube, LinkedIn. So if you look up my name or look up Rastegar Capital, you can see it. You can buy the book, The Gift of Failure, on Amazon. It's on Audible or Spotify. You can listen to it. And yeah, come find us. Come find us. If you need something, reach out. We have a team that answers a lot of these questions. And if you're in Austin, come holler at us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, thanks again for being on the show. Before we let you go, is there any last piece of advice, any last tips you want to just leave with us here today?
I'll tell you, the world is changing at such a rapid pace. There has never been a better time in the history of mankind to become wealthy. That if you want it, all the resources there, go get it right this second. It's right this moment. It's changing so quickly, and there's so many tools available that in a very short amount of time, you can become exponentially successful if you use the tools in front of you and get off your ass right at this moment.
Absolutely. Love it, man. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next show. Take
Got it,
care.
bro.